So let's talk about where herd immunity meets criminal responsibility. Because holding Donald Trump and Mike Pence accountable for preventable coronavirus deaths, like justice, matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So I've talked before about Donald Trump's criminal responsibility or liability for coronavirus deaths. But what Trump and company have now been caught doing, trying to affirmatively infect as many people as possible, makes prosecution all the more necessary and hopefully all the more certain. So Politico was first to break the story, and here is how Vanity Fair reported out some of what Politico first broke. If all you did was look at the coronavirus figures in the US, more than 16.9 million infected and over 306,000 dead, you might think that the Trump administration's policy was to just sit back and let everyone get this highly contagious, very scary disease. And you wouldn't be wrong. According to Politico, internal emails show that Paul Alexander, a Trump appointee, a Health and Human Services advisor, wrote to the head of the department on July 4, quote, "We need to establish herd immunity, and it only comes by allowing the non-high-risk groups to expose themselves to the virus, period. Infants, kids, teens, young people, young adults, middle-aged with no conditions, etc., have zero to little risk, so we use them to develop herd. We want them infected. It may be that it will be best if we open up and flooded the zone and let the kids and young folk get infected. So the bottom line is, if it's more infectious now, the issue is who cares?" Close quote. Who cares? Well, the dead care. Their family members care. The people who are hospitalized care. The people who are on ventilators clinging to life care. And, I thought that the evidence couldn't get much stronger for criminal liability for Trump and company after the release of the Bob Woodward tapes, right? Remember, back in January and February, when Donald Trump was telling the public there virtually is no virus, nothing to be concerned about, it's going to disappear like a miracle. What was he telling Bob Woodward behind closed doors in recorded conversations? Donald Trump said, "Bob, this is so much deadlier than even your serious strains of the flu. Bob, do you know how easily transmitted this is? By air. Just by breathing, Bob, not by touching. It's not transferred by touch, just by breathing. Bob, this is bad. This is dangerous." At the same time, he was telling we the people, there's nothing to worry about. Go about your business. Don't wear masks. Remember how he would mock people who wore masks, all the while admitting behind closed doors that it was airborne? It was so much deadlier than the average flu, and it was so easily transmitted. He was telling us, don't wear masks, because 15 cases will soon be down to 0, and it will disappear like a miracle, and the warm weather will kill it off. And here's what gets lost sometimes, folks. While Donald Trump was lying to us, putting us in harm's way affirmatively. Mike Pence was the head of the coronavirus task force. Mike Pence knew the truth about how deadly and how easily transmitted it was, and he stood by silently as Donald Trump lied to us. That makes Mike Pence equally responsible for avoidable coronavirus deaths. Now let's talk for a minute about homicide liability. So for 22 of my 30 years as a prosecutor, I handled murder cases in Washington, D.C., including as chief of homicide, responsible for supervising 30 homicide prosecutors and overseeing all murder prosecutions in the city. So I like to think I know my way around a homicide case. So here is why I maintain that what Donald Trump and Mike Pence and others have done constitutes a low level of homicide. Let's call it criminally reckless homicide. Some jurisdictions call it involuntary manslaughter, some call it negligent homicide. Let's refer to it as criminally negligent homicide. There are only three things that you need to prove. Three elements. Number one, that Donald Trump acted in a grossly negligent way, or that Donald Trump had a duty to act, which he did as president, and he failed to act, and that failure is a product of gross negligence. Donald Trump satisfies element number one in either of those two ways because his conduct was grossly negligent. The second element is that his grossly negligent conduct was reasonably likely to result in death or serious bodily injury to another. When you're dealing with a deadly virus, Donald Trump's grossly negligent conduct obviously was reasonably likely to hurt others. And the third element, which sounds tougher to fulfill than it actually is that, given element one and element two, Donald Trump thereby caused the death of others. And people would say, well, wait. Causing the death of another sounds like he had to shoot or stab or strangle or bludgeon the victim. That's not the way causation is defined in the law. Causing the death of another means that your conduct is a substantial factor in bringing about the death of another. And Donald Trump's grossly negligent conduct was a substantial factor in bringing about preventable, needless coronavirus deaths. Can I use one real-world example at the risk of going on a little bit too long? So we had a case in D.C., homicide case, where a robber was pursuing a victim, trying to rob a victim, and the victim attempting to get away from the robber darted out into traffic, ran between a couple of parked cars, ran out into oncoming traffic, was struck by the car and killed. So it was the car, it was the vehicle that caused the victim's death. But we charged the robber with homicide. Why? Because the robber's conduct was a substantial factor in bringing about the death of the victim. Donald Trump, by his grossly negligent conduct, has chased us out into oncoming traffic. And the oncoming traffic is a deadly pandemic, a deadly virus. Donald Trump and Mike Pence and others are criminally responsible for needless coronavirus deaths. You know, the Supreme Court said once in a written opinion, death is different. Death is different. And it is. I mean, it's obviously different for the victim. It's different for the victim's family. It's different for the community that's impacted by that death. And we have now topped 300,000 deaths. Death is different. And for the dead and their families, justice must come. And justice matters. And as always, folks, thank you for tuning into these YouTube videos. If you would like to support our all-volunteer efforts here, you can go over to patreon.com, sign up to become a patron, and if you choose to do that, I will send you some Team Justice stickers and a handwritten personal note of thanks. You can also now follow us on Facebook, Justice Matters with Glenn Kirshner. If you're inclined, you can go over and like our page. And as always, you can also catch up with me on Twitter at Glenn Kirshner2, where I spend a good bit of time day and night trying to answer your legal questions. So as always, folks, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.